Many great thanks, and thanks for the work that you put in and the advocacy that you've made possible. Kristin, thank you for what you and your team do. And this association is the loudest, most vocal champion on Capitol Hill, and that is a powerful and meaningful thing and damn hard to do. So thank you for your work, because it's not just about the association staff. That's important. But it's your relationships with policymakers that make a huge difference. That is the way that you can be a force multiplier and make better policy, public policy possible. So thank you for your work and our joint work together on sound public policy. Warren, thank you for your leadership on not just the Financial Services Committee, but for the House, for the Congress, for the nation. And I'm grateful to be with you. So thank you all.
Well, we are honored to have you here tonight. I'm going to go a little off script here, but
I want to ask about this couch, first of all. Because
you can get a little closer. Don't be shy. I don't bite too hard.
As my team will tell you, it's been a psychologically challenging year, right? You have a friend tell you, if something bad happens, would you look after the place? And I said, sure, nothing bad's going to happen, right? And you come home in an armored vehicle. So I feel like I should lay down to have this conversation if I really want to do it appropriately. Allison, Lindsay, and Tim would be horrified. So,
well, can you tell us?
I don't want to embarrass Allison, more importantly. I don't want to embarrass Allison. As you all know, that would be very bad.
Yeah, we don't want to do that for sure. She's definitely might be in charge. But can you tell us a little bit about the experience of this fall? Because I think as we were all talking and discussing in the summer and in the early September, we thought, okay, there's this timeline and there's going to be some legislation moving maybe, and that entirely blew up, and you found yourself in the middle of the universe and then in the middle of a global conflict. Like, can you just reflect a little bit on what you learned from that experience? And well, A, how did you get there? But B, like, I feel like you kind of have emerged as a strong leader with a lot of political capital, and I think you're in an incredibly powerful position. I mean, you already were, but now you're even more powerful. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So it's a lot to unpack. I mean, I've got Kevin McCarthy is one of my dearest friends in the world, and I made a pledge at the beginning of the Congress that I would help him. If you asked me, I would say yes. Which I found the first week of the speakership, the 15 rounds of votes, that I was active with a group of other folks that were trying to negotiate. I found I got called back in to help negotiate the debt ceiling increase and the fiscal restraint that we were able to get as a matter of that with Garrett Graves and I negotiating for House Republicans for the Speaker with the White House. And out of that, building more relationships with folks in the White House. And then for the fall spending package, I wanted to get that out of the way so I can get our policy, market structure and stablecoins on the floor this fall. Well, that blew up. And when the Speaker asked me to be on this list of folks, as a contingency plan. Well, first of all, I don't know how many of you knew that there was a contingency plan if the Speaker's taken out. As of a year ago, I didn't know it existed. Actually, as of 3 weeks before I became Speaker Pro Tem, I didn't know it existed. And so he calls me up and says, so, the Speaker has this list of folks, and if the Speaker's taken out or if the Speaker dies, the Speaker Pro Tem acts as Speaker of the House until you elect a new Speaker. I was like, oh, that's interesting. He goes, yeah, so I put you on my list, right? There's always a joke because, at my size, he always brings up the fact I'm on the short list. And he's like, not that list, it's actually short list of people, not short people list. So So of course, we're laughing about that stuff, and then and as things got closer and closer, I had said yes, and out of obligation to him, to House Republicans, to the institution, and then I found myself in this position for the House, and not one that I chose, and not one the House had chosen. So I had to be very careful about what I did, what I said, because it had broader implications for what I did. But I wanted to be fair and decent to people, because I think that's what politics is really missing right now. Let's disagree. It's okay to disagree with each other, but let's be respectful about it. So that's what I thought on day one, right? And then for 23 days, it was challenged. Most hours I was awake on whether or not I really did want to be decent to folks. But it was strange because I dropped, my wife and I have 3 kids. And when I'm, driving the kids to school is important to me. So that morning I drove the kids into school. They're here in D.C. In our wagon. Our Volkswagen wagon, right? 3 car seats, 2 booster seats and a car seat in the back. And I drive in, drop them off, and I park at the Capitol. And then I get the briefing 2 hours later, and I call my wife and I said, can you come pick up the car? Right? Well, why? Well, because I'm coming home in an armored car, and we'll have 24/7 security until this is done. She said, you better make it fast. So anyway, the great thing about that is the 5-year-old, the 9-year-old, and the 2-year-old took this in very different ways. The 5-year-old thought it was pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. You got the lights, the sirens, the security detail. The 2-year-old thought it was awesome, right? He started wearing vests because all the security detail, he wanted to look pretty cool. And then the 9-year-old is absolutely horrified and embarrassed and doesn't want to be seen with me. So it was a great mix because I felt all of those emotions. It was pretty cool. Those are nice vests. I'm a little embarrassed. So for me, as a random member of Congress, other than this name that you think is familiar, right? And no, he's been dead for 200 years. I have a familiar name, but nobody knows me. My 19th year in Congress, and that's been a purposeful act. I'd like to be able to walk through any airport and no one have any clue who the hell I am. It is a great superpower because I have served with people and I have friends. Warren, you know when you get it at home, right? Lisa knows, right? You can't go to the grocery store without taking an hour and a half. So I love being able to breeze in, breeze out, being the random apparition, right? And now I get stopped. Which means I'll probably have to stop wearing the bow tie. I think that is a key thing, which most of my staff would be happy about. And anyway, I'll stop with that. But anyway, it was a wild time, completely unexpected, but it did push back the work. And the work is really what I'm focused on. This is my 10th term in Congress, my first term as chair of the committee. And being chair of the committee, I can't determine how Warren's going to vote. I can barely control how I'm going to vote. But I can set the agenda and the pace. The agenda and the pace. Those are the 2 powers of chairing a committee in the House. And I had an aggressive pace that got blown up because of the bank failures in March, because of the debt ceiling negotiations in May. And so our agenda got pushed back. And we have more work to do to nail down policy, sure, but we have a narrow window to act. And we have to make as much progress as possible with the time frame we're given. And the year just got all jacked up, frankly. And jacked up because, House Republicans effectively blew ourselves up for 2 months. And we're trying to put that back together. And I think we can still put it back together.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the work that you mentioned. I think, there's really sort of 2 big initiatives, right? There's market structure legislation and stablecoin legislation. Can you talk a little bit about sort of where market structure is at? And you mentioned the timing, right? Like the timing is very key because we have an election coming up. And what are the windows of opportunity and sort of where are you all at, and what do you think that this legislation, that weirdly your name is not on, it's a very complicated bill because it's your bill, but you're not on the bill yet. We got to figure out what's going on here. But can you talk a little bit about like, what this bill does
let me talk about that
and
first.
why it will help?
Let me talk about this first. I get to chair the committee, okay? And in the House, if you chair a House committee, you get a painting of yourself, right? Which I found kind of creepy, to be honest with you. And because I was temporary speaker, I was not the 56th speaker, I was the 55.5, right? So I don't know if I get a full-size picture, a little picture. I don't know if it's a painting or like it's like my art project or something. But you get a painting, right? I get to set the agenda, and the committee rules for financial services, I get to pick the subcommittee chairs. And my leadership team, I get to pick that. Committee chairs get greedy, though, and when they get greedy, they get dumb. And when they say, I'm driving an agenda, and I'm going to put my name on all the good bills, and you're going to get the crud, you're going to get the junk. It is bad. It is selfish and dumb. And so I ask French Hill and Warren Davidson to run our digital asset subcommittee. First, creating the digital asset subcommittee, giving it power, giving it staff, and hiring a smart, capable team, and driving the agenda and the time frame. And the decisions that Warren had to make and French had to make were rough. But I asked French to chair this subcommittee, and I said, French, we've got 2 bills. Which one do you want your name on? And he says, well, of course I want market structure. It's a far more interesting bill. And I said, well, damn. And the real mensch of the whole thing is Warren, who's the OG in the space. And Warren and Tom Emmer have been big actors here and have shepherded this process. But in this space, that's the reason why French is the lead on Fit 21, and it's the right thing. He's put a massive amount of work into it. Now, to the substance of it. So we got a bill out by the end of July. We had spent 15 months working on a stablecoin regime. We can get to that. But we had to put in the intellectual framework on what is a full-scale SEC CFTC regime. Ag Committee has done a great job over 4 or 5 years in putting together a frame. And it was really helpful. The Financial Services Committee had not done the same. We had not had hearings. It was not the priority of the committee leadership at the time. And so we had to put on a full frame that could bring Democrat colleagues along to show there's consumer protection. And what we're doing is making small alterations to what is existing law, not a whole novel concept. And we had to thresh out between the CFTC and the SEC. Now, at this time last year, I wasn't sure how it was going to go. Glenn Thompson was going to be the new chair of the Ag Committee. I was going to be the new chair of the Financial Services Committee, and we could spend the whole year fighting each other. He would not get a product, I wouldn't get a product, and we both knew that. And so we started the conversation and thought, well, can we just cut a deal? Because effectively, in this route between what is a commodity and a security, once you get into the details of this stuff, it becomes pretty simple. If you're not decentralized, you're faking it, right? And once we understand is that dividing principle between what is a digital commodity and what is a traditional raise. If you're going to raise for a business initiative, you got to do it through securities law. And if you want to pretend the SEC away, you can't. They have way too many people, they have way too many lawyers, they have way too big of a budget, and they have federal agents that knock on people's door, whether or not you're domestically or you're somewhere else, right? They find you, they put you on a plane, and they bring you where they want you. Not talking about anybody in particular. But we had this conversation and recognized that we actually had a unity of purpose, and this was going to be the finer piece of policy that we had to go thresh out. The Senate has not done the same work that we've done in the House. We had timed and synced up in July 2 committees marking up in the same week. We produced an identical product that we could take to the House floor at the end of July. To sync up a big bill and have it done for 2 committees same week is crazy. Doesn't happen. We did it. And I want to thank Glenn and his team on the Ag Committee. And without that cooperation, we couldn't have gotten bipartisan votes. I mean, they voice voted the bill out of the Ag Committee. We got bipartisan votes out of the Financial Services Committee. And in the Financial Services Committee, that's rare. So now it's, what do we do? I'm getting, there's a lot of talk about end-of-year products, end-of-year packages. Let me wrap with this. The National Defense Authorization Act is a vehicle that's gotten passed since Truman was president. The National Defense Authorization Act and government funding will eventually happen. Those are 2 trains that are leaving the station. We have product we want to put on that train. We've got to go work with our Senate colleagues. I got to work with my counterpart here in the House. And if we can get some consensus on policy, it can make its way on that train leaving the station. I think it's highly unlikely we have any real products out of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. There's a lot of press about this. None of that stuff is new that is being reported in the press. They're just finding out about it because people are not happy, and they're trying to come after me, and I welcome it. In fact, I revel in it. And I'm willing to cut a deal. I'm willing to negotiate products. I've shown that I have the capacity to do that. And I don't think there's been the equal offering of negotiating on the NDAA. Now, I hope that resets the conversation for us to discuss this in January and February around the government funding the bills that will come. And that'll be our next opportunity to get products through. And that's what I'm interested in getting teed up. Market structure and a stablecoin regime.
Can you talk a little bit more about stablecoin? Because it's interesting. Like I mean, I think most of us in this room, as we were leading into the great markup in July, we were like, oh, market structure, that's kind of a heavy lift. But stablecoin, that's like low-hanging fruit. They've been working on this for years. Like, that should be the easy one, and it turned out to be very, very contentious. Like, can you talk a little bit about how those negotiations are going? Because it's not just a congressional thing. The White House is incredibly involved. Some of the agencies are involved. Like,
yes.
How is that? And do you see a pathway forward for that
Yes.
on those end-of-year packages, or is there some other route?
Unfortunately, what happened in July is late action by a new staffer at the White House. And I think it's unfortunate. The president had an executive order that was far-reaching. I know you were heavily engaged in these conversations at the White House. But they have a massive workflow on digital assets to understand and to have work products and work streams through the agency process. The president has very few executive orders. When you have an executive order by the president, it is saying this is a high priority. Well, as a Republican and a Republican majority in the House, producing a product related to a presidential high priority, that rarely happens. So when we produced a product that met 80% of what they wanted for stablecoins, and then a White House staffer says no, like, wait a second, I thought you said this was a high priority. And if a Republican, I'm making you an offer at 80% of what you want, I don't know, maybe you want to get your head out of wherever it is. And I said something to that effect. Now, we had started in the summer of 22, in April of 22, with the Waters team. Allison, we were on draft number 70-ish at the end of July. And I said, time to put the pins down. We're either going to mark up this bill, and I'm going to have the cooperation of the ranking member, or I'm going to mark up the bill that I want to mark up. because I'm the chair and we're in the majority. And I'm going to go to Warren and say, what's our product? And so we marked up what is a Republican draft out of the committee and got Democrat votes with it. Waters was not happy because she wanted the compromise draft but wouldn't come to the table with votes. Now, I get it and I understand. I've been in a similar situation when she was chair of the committee and she made a play call to go her direction on policy after we had long and significant negotiations about a bill. That doesn't mean we can't come back to the table and talk more and come to some better understanding. I've proven I have the votes, and the administration, the White House, other White House staffers have now seen that we have the votes, and maybe they won't listen to one White House staffer. Maybe they listen to Treasury that was involved in all 70 drafts that we had, 70-something drafts that we've gone through. So we have a lot of fruitful work. There's interest in the Senate, and there's a huge opportunity for us to get sound policy here. If we're not going to get sound policy on stablecoins, I want to just be clear. If we don't get sound policy on a stablecoin regime that has the basis by which you treat digital assets, we will not do it. And I'll tell you why. It is far better to allow the states to act and to change the default position, which will happen in 2 years' time. And we can come back in 25 and have this same conversation, but the things that I'm litigating won't be the issue, because you'll have a majority of the population in the United States residing in states that will have a state-based regulatory regime for stablecoins. I don't want to do it that way. I don't think that's good for the speed of innovation that we want, the basis of treatment for digital assets that all of us need in order for us to build this next generation of technology. But that may be what we find ourselves in the position of doing. And so a good deal is a good deal, but a bad deal is not worth it when you know that the states are going to move very quickly and we're going to have a better regime in 25 if a bad deal is the only thing we get offered this time around.
Oh.
I'm answering way too long tonight.
No,
I'm sorry.
I've been talking all day, so this is great. Final question for you, though. So there was a lot of speculation earlier this year. What is Patrick McHenry going to do? You announced you're running for re-election. What's the future for you? I mean, you clearly held an amazing leadership position. You also are arguably at the end of your term limits at the committee. Like, what do you see in your future? What do you want to accomplish in government, outside of government? Like, what are your goals and dreams?
I made the decision 3 years ago. I wanted to get policy. I don't want position. I wanted policy. So I forwent. Is that a term? Anyway, I didn't run for leadership going into this Congress. I wanted to chair the committee for the very specific set of issues that we're talking about. I want to get those things done. That's my goal. That's what I'm here to do. All this other stuff, these are great. It's a wild experience, right? That I've had this year. And I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had. But I said, I don't want to be in leadership. I need policy. I want to see policy and get results. Now, we get policy, we get results, maybe the other things come. I'm not closing that off. But my focus is on getting results. That's what I need. And that's not where I am yet. And that's why I'm pushing so hard to get results. Now, the good news is I've got a district that I've represented before. They keep changing the lines in North Carolina, and that's a welcome and good thing. So it makes me pretty happy about what could be an otherwise insane election year. Well, no, that will be otherwise an insane election year. So we'll see.
Well, we hope you're around for as long as you're willing to do this work. I imagine it is incredibly long hours. It's a lot to balance, but we feel very lucky to have someone with your intellect, with your passion, and really with your ability to bring people together and cut a deal to get something done. I mean, that's very rare these days, and very much appreciate having you where you are. We hope you stay for a very long time.
Thank you.
But thank you very much. It's an honor to have you here tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.